Pasta alla Siciliana, also known as pasta alla Trapanese, is the pesto you should be making. It's got a little bit of basil and a whole bunch of fresh tomatoes. And when you toss it with pasta, it is dang tasty. Plus, I think we can use a few classical cooking techniques to pull out even more flavor. Sound good? Let's cook. Now, the main ingredient that makes this different than a regular basil pesto genovese is the use of fresh in-season tomatoes. But the great thing about this sauce is it's only 7 ingredients plus a little salt and pepper. Fresh basil, a little bit of fresh mint, that one's a secret, garlic, cheese, almonds, a little bit of olive oil, and of course, fresh tomatoes. Quite a few recipes out there for a pesto trapanese call for the skin to be removed, but for me, it's never really bothered me that much. And if you've seen all of my other recipes that use fresh tomatoes, I usually don't remove them. Plus, there's actually a lot of flavor in the skins that can help accentuate the overall taste of the sauce. So for me, I'm gonna leave them on there. I've got 3 total pounds of Roma tomatoes. What we wanna do is simply remove the core and then slice them in half. Now, any fresh tomato will work here, whether it's a cherry, an heirloom, or a vine ripe. And instead of a raw, skinless tomato, I'm going to push the flavor a bit more and give them a light roast. As some of the moisture releases, the flavor concentrates and it makes the tomatoes much more delicious. These little things, like using a classic technique to pull out more flavor put into practice, will absolutely make you a better cook. I'm going to put them on a rack over a sheet tray lined with parchment paper. You know I love parchment paper. Then we're going to give them a light drizzle of olive oil, maybe a total of 2 tablespoons. Then we want to season it up with coarse salt and freshly cracked black pepper. It's going in the oven on a middle rack at 450 degrees Fahrenheit convection or 475 degrees fan off for a total of 30 minutes. One of the other ingredients that's different and not really used in a typical pesto is the use of almonds instead of pine nuts. Now, you can absolutely use pine nuts, it's just that they're really expensive. When you use almonds too, make sure that they're skinned or else it's going to turn our pesto a brownish color. I'm going to add these 1 cup of slivered skinned almonds to a large non-stick skillet. Then we're going over to the cooktop and over low to medium heat while frequently stirring. We want to cook these for 4 to 6 minutes. Over that period of time, about 25 to 30% of the almonds will start to lightly brown up like this. That is the goal. Do not push the almonds past this stage. And when you're done, try it. And then try a raw almond. You'll be able to see the difference of how much more intense in flavor these almonds are after being toasted. Plus, they're a little crunchier. I like that as well. Next, I'm going to finely grate 8 ounces of Pecorino Romano cheese. And I always like to do it on parchment paper so that it's easy to transport, plus one less dish to clean up. Now, the classical cheeses that you would use in a pesto alla Siciliana are going to be a Pecorino Romano or even a Parmigiano Reggiano. Both will work extremely well in this dish. Now, I tend to gravitate more towards a Pecorino Romano. One, it's a southern Italian cheese, and that is closer to Sicily. Remember, pesto alla Siciliana. It's better though to me because it's a younger cheese, so it's softer, it's creamier, and it tends to be tangier and saltier, which I absolutely like, and of course my family's gonna love too. And for me, you know I cook for smiles. Once you're done finely grating up that cheese, just simply set it to the side. Then let's have a look at our tomatoes. They look fantastic. I'm telling you, that little roast is going to go a long way into the overall flavor of this sauce. Let's take out these tomatoes and set them to the side and wait till they cool to room temperature. And this is a point of personal preference, but I'm going to leave the seeds in. There's been plenty of tests out there that try sauces with seeds and without seeds, and no one can tell the difference in flavor, so I'm going to keep them. But most importantly, it's what they're attached to. It's what we call tomato jelly. There's so much umami flavor in here, some amino acids and sugars. We want that, so I'm going to keep the seeds in here. The most important thing we need to do here is just let it cool down a little bit before we blend everything together. As a quick substitute, if you're making this recipe out of season, you want to use a high quality tomato like a San Marzano. Now, when you do use this, you want to use the tomatoes, not any of the sauce in the can. If you do use it, your sauce will be too saucy, which you definitely do not want. And now finally to make this sauce. This can absolutely be done in a mortar and pestle, but it's hot out, it's summer, lazy. I'm gonna do it in a blender. A food processor will also work. We're gonna start with these room temperature tomatoes.
Next up, I'm going to add in the toasted almonds and then the Pecorino Romano cheese. I'm going to fit the cap on, then I'm going to start it at low speed and gradually crank it on to high. And what I'm just looking to do here is to completely break down the sauce so that it's nice and smooth to make more room in the blender. And it should look like this. Then I'm going to add in a half cup of olive oil, followed up with 1 cup of packed fresh basil leaves, about 45 to 50 total leaves, then 6 to 8 fresh mint leaves. Now the next classical ingredient would be 2 whole raw garlic cloves, which you can absolutely use. But if you want to take it a step further, I have some garlic confit laying around. This is slow cooked whole garlic cloves in olive oil until they become nice and tender and browned up. Got a great recipe you can check out on my website at billyparisi.com or in my smoked lamb video. I'm going to add about 4 or 5 of these cloves right to that blender. Going to give it a quick season of coarse salt and freshly cracked black pepper. Then we're going to crank the speed up to high, and I want it to be completely smooth like this, no specks of anything. It's just going to make it coat to the pasta that much more. And just like anything, be sure to taste it and adjust any seasonings accordingly.
It's incredible. The flavors are really, really good. This is totally just off the cusp. And I know I'm going to take so much flack for this, and you know what? I'm okay with it. The one thing that I think it needs just a little bit of is acid. And for me personally, balsamic vinegar, it just goes well with tomatoes. And it's going to add just that right amount. Just those umami flavors. It's going to pinch right here. It's just going to make it more delicious. Ask yourself, tomato plain, tomato with a little bit of balsamic vinegar on it? Yeah, it's next level. I'm gonna do it, okay? Maybe tablespoon and a half. That's all we're gonna need.
Once the balsamic vinegar's in there, I'm just gonna spin it over high speed to incorporate everything and then just briefly set it to the side.
And the pesto alla siciliana can absolutely be used like a regular pesto genovese. You can put it in a salad, use it as a sauce on a piece of chicken or a sandwich. I love it. Tossed in pasta, just keeping it super simple. And for the pasta, I want something with a lot of like nooks and crannies so that it can sop up everything. So even a cavatappi or even a bussiata, both of these would work so good. Let's get it together.
In a large pot of boiling water, I'm going to add enough salt so that it tastes as salty as the ocean. This is going to do 2 things. 1, season up our water for the pasta and also help keep the water moving. Then I'm going to add in 1 pound of pasta, probably going to take about 10 minutes to cook, and halfway through that cooking process, I'm going to get my sauce ready. So I'm going to pour in half of this total recipe right into a large sauce pot. And as you can see, there's definitely some of this pesto alla siciliana left over. I'm just going to add it to a container. Be sure to label and date it. It will hold in the freezer up to 6 months or even in the refrigerator up to 7 days. Alrighty, let's go back over, check out the pasta. It is finished nice and al dente, which means to the tooth. It should be firm, but not crunchy. Going to quickly drain it, add it right over to that pot with the sauce in there. Next, I'm just going to sprinkle on a little bit more Pecorino Romano cheese because, why not? Then, using a spoon or a spatula, let's toss everything around until it is combined. If it's too thick, try loosening it up with about 1/4 to 1/3 cup of that hot pasta water. Try it out, make sure it's delicious, adjust any seasonings with coarse salt and freshly cracked black pepper. Then, to plate it up, I'm just going to add it to a large bowl and stack it high, and then finish up with a little bit more Pecorino Romano cheese. So good.
Let's get in this. Got a little roast on those tomatoes. Telling you, fundamental techniques makes good food and always brings people around the table. The tomatoes are so creamy. That toast on the almonds, that little bit of basil, I'm telling you, that hint of balsamic vinegar is going so far in this sauce. It is, dude, it's just really good. Super easy to make, and it's the perfect hot weather dish. And if you love pastas, especially ones that are on the lighter side, you gotta check out my pasta alla limone. I've got an awesome recipe video. See you on there.